Hello and welcome to another video for Criminology. In this particular video, we're going to talk a little bit about a few sociological concepts. But before we get to that, I want to follow through with our discussion on the social contract and utilitarianism from the last video. So this is my copy of the Declaration of Independence and U.S. Constitution. Now, the idea of the social contract is that individuals or the citizens are willing to give up some of their rights in order to feel safe, to feel protected by the government. Well, the U.S. Founders really eschewed that idea. So the articles of the Constitution are about the organization of the government. But when we get to the amendments, these are basically things saying that we don't acknowledge the social contract in these particular areas. For instance, Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. In other words, as much as we might feel safer to allow the government to ban the practice of Islam, because we might feel safer because radical Islamic terrorists were the masterminds and completers of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. No matter how much we might feel safe by outlawing Islam, one, it's unconstitutional because we don't allow the government to outlaw something just so we can feel safe. We don't give up those freedoms just so we can feel safe. Although, two, we also need to remember that we might feel safe but still not be safe. See, we can outlaw anything that we want like that, but it's not necessarily going to make us safer. So, I mean, we could go on to the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So we can't infringe that to feel safer. We just cannot do that. Amendment 3, no soldier in time of peace shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. In other words, if it's peacetime, the only way you can do that is by getting the permission of the home owner or the resident of the home. In wartime, it has to be prescribed by law how you will do that. What is the procedure if you're going to do that during wartime? Well, see, we can't let the government overrule that simply so we can feel safe. It's written in the U.S. Constitution. Our founders wanted to make sure that that was written into the Constitution. So if you read the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, they are specifically about rejecting the social contract. So for those who say that the founding fathers accepted the social contract, well, they might have accepted it in part, but they did not accept it in whole, especially when it came to individual rights. So let me share my screen so we can actually talk about some sociological issues when it comes to criminology. So we need to understand that societies have norms. Now, it's interesting. We like to think that societies operate on a principle of morality. We really do not operate on a principle of morality. Here's how we operate. Okay, so starting from the three that are not formalized, we have folkways. Folkways are things that teach us what is right versus what is rude. So if someone puts their hand out to shake hands, it's rude to slap their hand away. That's a folkway. These are things that we do, and if you don't do them, it's kind of rude, but that's about it. So mores, right versus wrong. So these are things that in our culture we do them, and everyone else had better do them as well. For instance, we might grow up in a culture that is very patriotic. The more is you stand for the flag and you put your hand over your heart. And if you are a veteran or a military person, then you salute as we are saying the national anthem or singing the national anthem or saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, this is right versus wrong. But there aren't laws against them. Okay, there aren't laws against them. So taboos. Taboos are things that are forbidden. So this is where we're considering right versus forbidden. And then laws or standards are right versus illegal. Or maybe we should say that legal versus illegal. Okay? So let's look at just the very next slide. So we've got the standards. These are the formalized rules, such as our laws. And in the US, our laws are formalized into written statutes, but they are also standardized into legal opinions. And then we have the mores. These are the social conventions. These are informal rules that of expected behavior. These are the things that we expect to have happen. Then we have the folkways. These are shared behaviors, such as not coming to class with body odor. It's kind of rude to come to class reeking of body odor, right? People have to sit next to you. There was a time where I sat behind a faculty member in a faculty meeting in a college that shall not be named. And they reeked of body odor. It was very difficult to sit there. See, that violated the folkways. And then there are taboos. These are informal negative norms. So they're like the mores, but these are things that you just don't do. So if you hear somebody say, you just don't do that in polite society. So we can actually think about police culture. So in any given police agency, there are standards, formalized rules, such as agency policies. There are also laws that govern how police operate. So those would be in the standards. There are mores, informal rules that police officers are expected to follow. They might be spoken, but they're not written. They might be unspoken, but everybody knows. You do not violate the blue wall of silence. Okay, now that's also a taboo, but remember, taboos are kind of a subset of mores. Very important to understand that. And then we have folkways. So one particular agency might have this idea that on Friday nights we all hang out together when we're not working. Okay, it's kind of rude that you don't show up, but nobody really thinks anything of it, and there aren't going to be any real consequences to that. And then there are taboos. These are things you just do not do. Okay? And a big one with the blue wall of silence is you don't inform on your fellow officers, right? Okay. Now, the standards are enforced by the government, but the mores, the folkways, and the taboos are informally enforced by cultural responses. For instance, if a police officer breaks ranks and violates the blue wall of silence, they might be snubbed. They might actually be bullied. And so there are consequences, but they're not legal consequences. They're not institutional consequences like firing or a letter in one's file, letter of reprimand. No, these are informal consequences. Think in terms of violating a moray um, within your family. You might disappoint your grandpa, and that's the last thing you'd ever want to do in your life. And your grandpa may not even tell you that he's disappointed, but the fact that he is disappointed is an informal social control that has more impact on you than if you'd actually been formally punished. Because you see, there's formal social control and informal social control. Mores, folkways, and taboos, those are informal. Now, notice they could be physical. I mean, you might get beat up, who knows? But it's not formalized because it's not written as a formal punishment in the codes, in the rules. So there are formal and informal. Very important to understand these things as we move forward. Because as we think about violating the law, and we think about all these theories about breaking the law, sometimes, if you think back to a couple of videos ago, when we look at mala prohibita laws, sometimes those formalized laws become formalized that were previously mores, taboos, or maybe even folkways. And the society decided we need to go from informal social control to formal social control and make these illegal so that the government can punish them. And there may not be positive reasons for doing that. So it's very important to understand that when we're talking about the creation of criminal laws, of those standards, sometimes we move a moray, a taboo, or a folkway, even a folkway, into a formal standard because this is the way we have to do things. So we're going to punish people. We need to punish people formally who don't fall in line. Very important that we understand that as we start to move through the actual theories of criminology. We'll see you next video.